At my son's first birthday, my mother-in-law accidentally knocked over the $1,000 marionette display, muttering, "Oops. But my daughter's kids deserve this more." My father-in-law laughed. "You never sacrifice for family." Her gift? A rewrapped crayon box with expired tickets. I said nothing. I just canceled the $16,000 cabin retreat, pulled funding, and locked the budget. Her text? "Our plans." I replied, "Ask your star. You ever plan something down to the tiniest detail and still feel like you got punched in the gut for trying?" Yeah, that was Ezra's first birthday for me. My name's Cameron. I'm 37, live in Nashville, and work as a marketing consultant. But for my son Ezra, I moonlight as an over-the-top party planner. Kid was only turning 1, but I wanted it to be magic. Not because he'd remember it, but because he deserved to be surrounded by wonder. So I rented out this gorgeous, historic theater downtown. Red velvet curtains, antique chandeliers, the works. Theme: puppets, strings, lights, the whole enchanted vibe. Ezra had this thing for twinkly lights and anything that moved on strings. I hired a puppet troupe that had performed off-Broadway, a local illusionist, even had a marionette display custom built by this guy in East Nashville who used to design animatronics for theme parks. The man made Ezra a baby-sized puppet modeled after him, complete with little felt overalls. It was adorable. I should have known it was too good to last. Everything was going smoothly. Guests arrived. Ezra sat wide-eyed on my lap as the puppets danced and waved. Dana, my wife, was smiling genuinely. I caught a rare moment of peace. Then came the crash. Literally. Marla, Dana's mother, was teetering around the marionette display, holding a half-empty mimosa and muttering under her breath. And before I could even process what she was doing, she reached out and tipped the entire centerpiece display like it was a cardboard box. Not weeks of work and $2,000 of craftsmanship. Strings snapped. A puppet arm flew off. Ezra flinched in my arms. "Oh, oops," Marla said, like she'd dropped a napkin. "You spoil him more than my daughter ever got. Maybe that's why she's so tense all the time." I stood frozen. Not out of shock, out of restraint. My fists clenched behind my back as I took a long breath through my nose. Dana's face turned pale, like someone had unplugged her. Howard, my father-in-law, sat in the front row watching the chaos. He didn't even get up to help. Just laughed, actually laughed, and said, "Cameron, man, you ever hear of subtlety? Not everything has to be a Broadway production." People chuckled nervously, glancing between me and the collapsed display. Ezra looked up at me like he wanted to cry, but wasn't sure if it was allowed. That broke something in me. Then came Marla's gift. She handed Dana this old, dented shoebox wrapped in newspaper. Inside, broken crayons and expired Chuck E. Cheese tickets. I'm not kidding. No note, no joke, gift explanation, just literal trash. Dana stared at it like she'd been handed a dead fish. "Thought he might enjoy some nostalgia," Marla said with a smile that never reached her eyes. I smiled too. Not the polite kind. The kind where something starts breaking inside your head. Later, as I walked around picking up bits of string and puppet limbs while Ezra napped upstairs, I heard Howard say to one of Dana's cousins, "Cameron's a good earner, but God, he's exhausting." They thought I was out of earshot. They were wrong. That night, I didn't argue, didn't raise my voice. I just went upstairs, kissed my son's forehead, and started a quiet list in my head. A list of everything I'd done, for them, for Dana's family, and what was coming next. That night, after everyone had cleared out and the theater was just shadows and sticky floors, I drove home in silence. Dana didn't say much. I could tell she was trying to pretend the whole thing hadn't happened, or that it wasn't as bad as it was. But it was. I stayed up after she went to bed, poured a glass of rye, sat at the kitchen island, and opened my laptop. No music, no rage, just clarity, cold and smooth like the whiskey in my hand. First thing I did was open my Google Calendar and delete the event I'd labeled Lake House 3rd week June. $16,000 for a lakeside cabin reunion. A family-wide gift I'd prepaid 6 months ago as a surprise. Fireplace, boat rental, catered dinners, the whole thing. Meant as a gesture. One last try to pull us all into something warm. Gone. Next, I opened a spreadsheet I'd maintained secretly for 2 years. It tracked every quiet dollar I'd funneled into the extended family. Tutoring fees for Aaron's fledgling side business, the car repair for Howard's old Buick, the extra groceries Marla always claimed they were short on. I didn't need to scroll far. Everything was right there, labeled and dated. The tutoring payments were the easiest to cut. They were billed through a private payment portal with no contract. I logged in, clicked Cancel Recurring, and typed in one sentence when asked why. Support withdrawn as of March 18th. Good luck. Then I opened the budgeting file, my magnum opus. I had built that spreadsheet for Marla and Howard when they were struggling after retirement. I'd tracked their bills, automated payments, Even set up gentle reminders for medical copays. I looked at the file for a long moment before locking it. Disabled all shared access. Changed the password to something petty, Puppet Show 1, and closed the tab. I didn't tell Dana. Not that night. Not the next morning. This wasn't a fight I was inviting. This was a reckoning they'd have to discover on their own. No confrontation. No speech. Just silence. The kind of silence that echoes louder than yelling. By the time the sun came up, the only record of everything I had done for them existed in backups they no longer had access to. And for once, that felt like peace. It was 2 days later when I saw the post. I wasn't even looking for it. I'd opened Facebook out of habit, just trying to kill time between meetings. But there it was, bright and loud, at the top of my feed, posted by Dana's cousin Troy. A photo of Marla mid-stumble, her heel caught in the side of the marionette platform, a wine glass tipping sideways in her hand. You could see the moment just before impact. One puppet already falling, Ezra in the background staring with big, startled eyes. The caption read, "Greatest birthday blooper ever, #crash the party, #Marla mayhem." I stared at it for a long time. Not the picture. I'd already lived that moment. But the comments. The laughing emojis. The LMAO replies. People tagging others. One said, "This needs to go viral." Another, "Classic Marla. Always keeps it real." And then, "Cameron's parties are always extra anyway. Guess she was just editing the budget for him." My ears started ringing. I went into the family group chat. Still there. Dozens of unread messages, mostly from Dana's side, thanking us for the lovely party, asking about Ezra, sharing low-res photos of smashed cupcakes and wine-stained napkins. Not a single one mentioned the destroyed centerpiece, or the gift box of trash, or the way my face looked when Marla said I spoiled Ezra more than her daughter ever got. So I typed 3 words. Ask your stars. Then added, "I'm done." And I left the chat. No drama. No fireworks. Just a quiet exit. That night, I went through my calendar and deleted every recurring event involving Marla, Howard, or Aaron. No more birthday reminders. No more Sunday dinners or summer barbecues or check-in calls. Gone. Then I sat at the kitchen table, watched Ezra push a toy truck across the floor, and felt something settle in me. Not relief. Not anger. Just clarity. The kind you get when you realize people aren't laughing with you. They never were. The silence didn't last. By the next morning, my phone was lighting up like a fire alarm. Text after text. Missed calls. A wave of digital noise from the 3 usual suspects, Marla, Howard, and Aaron. Marla went first, of course. She opened with a voice message, 47 seconds of sugar-laced guilt and barely veiled manipulation. "Sweetheart, I didn't mean to knock the display. I'd had a long day, you know how my knees are. Let's not let one little oops ruin our relationship." One little oops. She said it like she'd tripped over a sock, not crushed the centerpiece of her grandson's birthday, and mocked him afterward. Then came Howard, opting for the classic boomer guilt trip. "You've always been a bit dramatic, Cam. This whole vanishing act of yours? Grow up." Right. Because walking away from dysfunction is childish, but chuckling while your wife sabotages your grandson's party is peak maturity. Aaron came last. Her messages were longer, messier. Emotional landmines. "I don't know what's gotten into you. You've always been the calm one. You helped me with everything even when mom and dad wouldn't. Please don't take that away just because of whatever this is." Whatever this is. I read each one exactly once. No replies. Just block. 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 By Thursday, my phone was quiet again. Blessedly empty. I poured my morning coffee and watched Ezra crawl into the living room with a stuffed giraffe under his arm. He looked up at me and smiled. No idea that his extended family was in meltdown mode. No idea I was standing in the ashes of something I'd kept alive for years. That night, Dana showed me something on Instagram. Erin had posted a photo of her feet in a bubble bath, a flute of champagne in hand. The caption, "Self-care is a revolutionary act. #healing, #namaste." 3 days after she'd messaged me crying poverty over the canceled tutoring payments. I laughed. Out loud. Just once. Then deleted the screenshot and moved on. Because here's the thing. I used to believe that if I was calm enough, generous enough, patient enough, they'd see me. Appreciate me. Turns out, the second you stop paying, you're just noise behind the curtain. And I was done performing. The invitation came in the form of a voicemail. "Cameron," Marla said, her voice syrupy and rehearsed, "we'd love to have you over for dinner. Just a small, healing night. No tension, just family. Let's talk, like adults." It was the word healing that made me laugh. Healing, like they were offering me a warm bath instead of a trapdoor. I almost didn't go. I sat in my car for 10 minutes outside their beige brick home, the porch light flickering like a bad omen. I could have turned the key, driven away, and never looked back. But I didn't. I wanted to look them in the eye. Wanted to see what their version of healing looked like. Dana stayed home with Ezra. She didn't try to talk me out of going, which said enough. When Marla opened the door, she was already mid-smile, like she'd been practicing it in the mirror. Cameron, you look tired, but in a good way. Come in. The table was set like a magazine spread. Linen napkins, candles, a bottle of red wine that Howard immediately opened without offering me a glass. Erin was already seated, scrolling on her phone. She looked up and gave me the tightest smile I'd ever seen. We ate roast chicken and asparagus in forced silence for about 5 minutes before Marla jumped in. So, she said, slicing her meat with too much enthusiasm, I know things got a little dramatic. Howard chuckled. A little? He ghosted the whole family over a puppet show. I kept chewing. No expression. Let them play their parts. Look, Erin added, I get it. You're sensitive. You always want things just so. But maybe you overreacted this time. Just a little. I set my fork down. You done? Erin blinked. What? Is this the part where you pretend to care? Or the part where you gaslight me about it? The air thickened. Marla reached for her wine. We're just trying to clear the air, honey. Then, like she couldn't help herself, she added, I mean, it's not like Ezra will remember the party. You went overboard, Cameron. Howard snorted. Kids won. He needed cake, not Cirque du Soleil. I said nothing. Just took a sip of water and waited. And then came the kicker. Erin smiled sweetly. You know, I still have that video. The one from Christmas a couple years ago when you went off about politics. You remember? You were yelling at Uncle Dale. I showed it to Mom the other day. We laughed for 20 minutes. Marla giggled into her napkin. Howard chimed in. Man was red in the face. Remember? Shouting about climate change like it was a football game. You're lucky you didn't bust a vessel. That's when I knew. This wasn't a dinner. It was theater. And I was the performance. I stood, slow and steady. Thanks for dinner. Oh, come on, Marla said, her tone flipping sharp. Don't be so dramatic. We're just teasing. But as I walked down the hallway to grab my coat, I heard it. Voices coming from the kitchen. The three of them, unaware I was still in earshot. I told you he'd sulk like a child, Marla said. Howard added, Dana married a control freak. That's all. Man's just bitter we don't kiss his ass. Then Erin, he thinks he's above us. Just because he makes more money doesn't mean he's better. I didn't move. Didn't breathe. Just stood there for a long, quiet moment. And in that instant, I felt the last thread snap. Not with rage. Not even sadness. Just certainty. They weren't my family. They were ghosts. And I was finally done trying to resurrect the dead. Howard's retirement gala was a black tie affair, held at one of those country clubs with more marble than soul. The kind of place where people wear watches worth more than cars and clap politely for men who've spent decades in corner offices, doing work no one outside their company understands. I wasn't planning to go. But then I remembered something Marla said at that healing dinner. Just because he makes more money doesn't mean he's better. They'd spent years cashing my checks while rolling their eyes behind my back. Time to show them what better looked like. I showed up in a charcoal suit, clean-shaven, calm, not a trace of anger on my face. Just that polished, cordial smile I reserve for client dinners and brand deals. In my hand, a silver-wrapped box. Dana came with me. She didn't ask questions. She wore a navy dress and a look that said, let it happen. The ballroom was packed. Caterers in white gloves. A jazz trio in the corner. The projector screen up front read, Congratulations, Howard Blackwell, a legacy of leadership. They had no idea what kind of legacy was about to unfold. We sat through 2 long speeches about Howard's integrity and unshakable family values. Marla dabbed her eyes like she was watching the end of a Hallmark movie. Erin stood up and gave a toast that included the words pillar of strength and always there when we needed him. I waited, patient, cordial, until they called me up, Howard's favorite son-in-law, they joked. Cameron wanted to say a few words, the MC announced. Polite applause. I took the mic, smiled at the crowd, and nodded toward Howard. You've built a long career, Howard. A lot of people here think they know what kind of man you are. I opened the box on the podium and pulled out a thick folder. But legacies aren't just about work. They're about what you leave behind, what you build or break at home. I flipped the folder open and held up a few sheets, letting the silence do the heavy lifting. Over the last 7 years, I've quietly paid over $35,000 to support this man and his family, property taxes, medical bills, car repairs. A murmur rolled through the crowd. Here are the Venmo transfers, bank statements, even gift receipts for things his family claimed they couldn't afford, but never forgot to criticize. Gasps now. Confused whispers. I turned to Erin's table. And you, Erin? Here's a copy of the invoice from that tutoring business I anonymously funded for 2 years. Maybe your next post about independent women should come with an asterisk. Dana's mouth was tight, her fingers clenched in her lap. But she didn't stop me. Not this time. I held up my phone, thumb hovering over a button. And just for fun, here's an audio clip. From a lovely dinner we had recently. I tapped play. Howard's voice came through loud and smug. Man's just bitter we don't kiss his ass. Marla, Dana married a control freak. Aaron, he thinks he's better than us. The room went still. I turned to Howard one last time. You wanted a send-off, Howard. So here's the finale. The house you live in? The one I've quietly covered the mortgage on for 5 years. I pulled out a folded document. It's being sold next month. Papers are signed. You'll receive a notice next week. Dead silence. Marla dropped her napkin. Aaron's face turned sheet white. Dana dropped her phone. I set the silver box down, smiled one last time, and stepped off the stage. No yelling. No applause. Just the quiet collapse of a fake legacy. And me, walking away clean. The fallout didn't take long. The next morning, my inbox was a mess, voicemails, texts, even an email from a distant cousin titled, "What the hell happened last night?" I ignored them all. By the end of the week, the ripple effects had turned to waves. Aaron's boyfriend, Evan, the one who always wore loafers with no socks, left her. Dana heard it secondhand through a mutual friend. Apparently, he hadn't known about the tutoring fund or the spa weekends paid for by some generous source. Once he realized that generous source was me, he walked. Marla tried a different tactic. She started working the back channels, church friends, old neighbors, people in the community we barely saw anymore. A story started making the rounds, that I was unwell, that I'd had a breakdown, that stress had changed me. One of Dana's coworkers even pulled her aside and asked, with concern, "Is Cameron okay? Your mom said he's been erratic." Dana just smiled and said, "He's never been clearer." Then there was Howard. He didn't beg, didn't even argue. He left a voicemail instead, one long, sputtering message that started with, "I can't believe you'd humiliate me like that," and dissolved into a profanity-laced rant about betrayal and family pride. I deleted it halfway through. The house was quiet again. Ezra colored on the floor with markers, his little knees curled under him like folded wings. He wasn't talking much yet, just babbling and mimicking sounds. But his joy came through in every scribble, swirls of blue and green that bled across the paper like waves. I watched him for a long time. The sun was filtering through the windows. There was no TV on, no buzz from my phone, just the soft scratch of his marker. And then I felt it quiet. Not silence, not the awkward, loaded kind I'd lived through at their dinner table for years, but real quiet. The kind that fills a room and doesn't demand anything back. Ezra looked up at me and held out a drawing, a crooked little shape that vaguely resembled a puppet on a string. He smiled. "Light," he said. I took it, held it like it mattered. Because it did. There were no more apologies coming. No more reckonings. I had cut the strings. And for the first time in my life, I wasn't bracing for impact. I was just here, with him, exactly where I was supposed to be. It started with a message from a stranger. A woman named Chelsea, someone I didn't recognize, sent a LinkedIn note that read, "Hi, Cameron. I think someone's using your name. Please check with First Metro Lending ASAP. A loan just flagged in our system, and something feels off." My gut sank. I'd heard horror stories like this, stolen identities, ruined credit, but I never thought it would happen to me. And definitely not from inside my own circle. I called the bank that afternoon. Spoke with a rep named Michael who sounded more nervous with every page he clicked through. "Yes, Mr. Reynolds. There's a $42,000 business loan issued in your name 2 months ago. It lists you as co-owner of a tutoring consultancy, Reynolds Academic Solutions." "I don't own that," I said flatly. He hesitated. "Then I think you should come in." I did. Brought my ID, tax records, personal documentation. Sat in a cold little office while Michael pulled up the documents. When he turned the monitor toward me, I felt sick. There it was. My full name. My signature, sort of. A forged version of it. And a scanned letter, typed in Arial font, with a fake letterhead in a fabricated consent paragraph that made it look like I had authorized my sister-in-law Erin to borrow on my behalf. The photo ID they used? A doctored copy of my driver's license. My face, her file. One slight blur over the barcode. They hadn't just faked a signature. They'd built a fictional version of me. I left the bank holding a thick folder of evidence. The weight of it felt like betrayal printed on paper. That night, I drove to Marla and Howard's. No appointment. No warning. Marla answered the door with that same old fake smile. "Oh, Cameron. Where's Erin?" I cut her off. She blinked. "Is everything okay?" I stepped inside. Held up the folder. She stole my identity. Her smile froze. I walked straight to the kitchen where Erin was leaning against the counter, scrolling her phone. She looked up and froze. "Read this," I said, dropping the folder on the table. She thumbed through the pages, faster and slower. By the third document, her face was ghost white. "That's not." "Don't," I said. "Don't lie. I have a call recording with the bank manager. He confirmed your IP address, your email, your file upload." Marla jumped in. "Cameron, please, let's not blow this up. She didn't mean to forge a loan, steal $42,000 in my name." Howard stepped into the doorway. "All right, calm down. It's not like she hurt anyone. I turned to him. She committed fraud. Marla's voice cracked. She was desperate. You cut everyone off. She didn't have options. I stared at her. So she made me an option? Against my will. Aaron whispered. I thought I could pay it back. I looked at each of them slowly. This isn't just betrayal. It's a crime. None of them argued. Because they knew. And they had let it happen. I didn't knock. I marched straight into Marla and Howard's house the next morning, clutching the folder under one arm and a printed transcript of the bank call in my other hand. My heartbeat was steady. My voice was ready. I wasn't coming to argue. I was coming to end it. Erin was at the kitchen island, sipping coffee like she hadn't stolen tens of thousands of dollars with a forged version of my name. Marla trailed after me from the hallway, barefoot and pleading already. Cameron, please, we can talk about this. No, we're past talking. Howard stood in the den with his arms crossed, still trying to act like the man of the house, even with the walls caving in around him. Erin set down her mug, eyes darting to the folder I'd slammed on the counter. I need you to say it, I said, turning toward her. Out loud. Right now. She swallowed. Cameron, say what you did, or I press charges before lunch. Marla stepped in, her voice syrupy and frantic. She's already scared, Cameron. This doesn't need to be some courtroom scene. This is a courtroom scene. I snapped, looking her dead in the eye. The only difference is the judge wears a hoodie and has a toddler napping upstairs. I turned back to Erin. She stared at the floor, voice barely above a whisper. I used your identity. For the loan. Why? I thought I could fix things, she said, blinking fast. The tutoring business dried up, and I didn't know how else to. You mean after I stopped quietly funding it? After I stopped letting you pretend to be independent? Erin didn't answer. She didn't need to. I slid the transcript across the counter. That's the bank call. You uploaded the documents from your apartment. Same Wi-Fi you post those yoga photos from. They had your timestamp. Your login. Howard muttered. You're really gonna ruin your wife's family over this? I looked at him and laughed, sharp and humorless. She ruined herself. You all just cheered her on. Marla's eyes filled with tears. Please, Cameron. If you do this, she could go to jail. We're talking about family. No, you're talking about consequences. Something none of you have ever experienced because I kept cleaning your messes. Erin stepped back, arms folded tight like she was trying to vanish into herself. Are you actually pressing charges? Yes. Silence dropped like a curtain. I pulled the already prepared envelope from my coat and set it down beside her coffee mug. Fraud. Identity theft. Forgery. The police will call by tomorrow. I've already filed the report. And if any of you attempt to contact me, I'll add harassment to the list. Marla collapsed into a chair. This isn't who you are. I tilted my head. No, this is exactly who I am. The man you thought would never fight back. I turned to the door. Oh, and the house. You've got 30 days to vacate. The buyers signed this morning. Howard finally broke. You spiteful little. But I was already walking away. No more strings, I said, reaching for the doorknob. No more puppeteers. And just like that, the show was over. Lights off. Curtain down. The courthouse was beige and brutal, just like they always are. No drama. No fireworks. Just a judge with a tired voice signing off on the final transfer of the property, their house. The same one I had kept afloat for years while they bragged about self-reliance to their friends and whispered that I was a bit intense behind my back. I didn't stay for the aftermath. Didn't watch them pack. Didn't wait for the calls. I had the locks changed by noon. Outside, a reporter from the Nashville Ledger was waiting, holding a clipboard and looking nervously at her phone. She walked up slowly, cautiously. Mr. Reynolds? I'm with the Ledger, local human interest section. We've been following the fraud case. There's been talk in the neighborhood. Would you be open to telling your side? She looked young, maybe fresh out of journalism school. Probably thought she was chasing a redemption story. I looked at her for a moment, then smiled. Not yet. She blinked. So, maybe later? I shrugged. Maybe never. Because some stories don't need explaining. They need erasing. I got in my car, drove past the now vacant house without slowing down, and didn't look back. Just kept going until the streets gave way to something quieter. Home. Ezra was out front with the sitter, squatting on the sidewalk with a box of sidewalk chalk in front of him. His knees were smudged with color. His hair was a little wild. He looked up when he saw me, grinned wide, and shouted, "Daddy." I dropped to my knees beside him. He was scribbling big, clumsy letters across the concrete. I leaned in to read them. Me and Dad. Scrawled in wobbly pink and blue. He looked at me, proud. "That one's you," he said, pointing at the figure with the big scribbled head and stick arms. "And that's me." It was the ugliest, most perfect piece of art I'd ever seen. I picked up a piece of yellow chalk and added a third name, Ezra with a big star above it. Then I wrote mine beneath his, smaller on purpose. We sat there for a while, side by side, coloring on the concrete like we had all the time in the world. My phone buzzed on the porch rail. A message from Marla. You'll regret this. One day, Ezra will ask what kind of man walks away from family. I didn't respond. Instead, I opened my contact list, scrolled down to the group labeled FAMOLD, and hit delete. One name at a time. Marla. Gone. Howard. Gone. Aaron. Gone. I cleared the call logs. Emptied the trash. Then I walked over to Ezra, sat down cross-legged next to his rainbow squiggles, and let my phone fall face down on the porch. He looked up at me, crayon blue smudge on his cheek. Can we draw more stars? Yeah, bud. As many as you want. And we did. No more drama. No more strings. No more tiptoeing around people who called me selfish with mouths full of food I bought. Just us. Me and the only family I'll ever need. Our names in chalk. And a future finally drawn on our own terms.